Okay, welcome to Monday. So I believe we're just going to pick up where we left off. I think this is done, actually. This was something that got done last week and I didn't close it out. Let me break this out into its own task because I still want to do this. So, actually, let me refresh, make sure I didn't lose anything. I've noticed sometimes Notion has trouble. Yeah, I think something popped in. Yeah, I gotta always remember to refresh Notion. Notion used to not have that problem. Like, it would auto-refresh, but I guess it doesn't. Alert users on poor quality image. Actually, are we doing that? I should alert the user if a book page isn't flat enough. Yeah, actually, we actually implemented that last week. Like, the app's starting to look pretty good. So, yeah, I think we're going to continue on with, like, let's get the text looking good in the book. That's what we're doing today. And I think the approach I was taking last Wednesday when I streamed is not going to work out. But I briefly want to prove that point by looking at Hawker data. And then I have a new approach that I think I'm going to take this morning. Should also let the user, if we detect that lighting on the page is poor. I'm not doing that right now, but we could. We don't OCR unless certain metrics are true. That's correct. And in fact, we take only about 1.5 seconds to determine that, and it actually makes everything faster. Yeah, sure. I'm going to call this done. I mean, there's a better version of this eventually that I could do. That's done. Priorities environment, processing under 5 seconds, fresh look at text detection, merge Hawker results. Okay, so merge left, right cameras. I'm gonna move that somewhere close to the top because I do want to try that soon-ish. And I'll just grab this comment because this does mean something to me. Because this is something we have to compute for the headset based on the lens distance from each other. And in theory, this would be a mathematical distance between the two lenses. And once we've computed it, like, it's something I have to actually generate using like a checkerboard pattern and take like 30 still images of it at different angles and then run some math, and then it'll compute basically like a matrix of numbers that we would save off to a file, and then we could load that in, and that calibration would then tell us how do you take like a left image and a right image and warp both of them so that they merge into a single image, which may improve quality. In theory, that would be identical for every headset, but there is a chance that warning. This likely works for all headsets, but there is a chance this would work perfect for my headset, but then cause issues for headsets with slight manufacturing defects. Luckily, the app is good enough at the moment that if that, like, I think I want to do this experiment, see if it's true, implement it, and if it does somehow turn out that, like, hey, I go put this out to test users and test users start having poor quality issues, and I turn this off and that fixes the issue, like, I think this is a nice to have at this point. But I do want to get quality from 95% up to like 99, and I think there's a number of things I can try to do that. This would be the ideal. I think this alone solves a lot of problems. Better quality data on the input is going to get us better images, is going to get us better everything. But this is done. I implemented all these things and it worked. So the app is fast. The quality is at like 95% every time I open a book. Render words by bbox. Okay, so this is the thing we're working on now. I think, so we tried implementing individual words And this is a bad idea. Almost certainly. Render bbox around book. I think what we need to do is just like compute line metrics instead. I think that is the smarter play. So let's do that. Python-m run for this little script that I run. All right, so to prove that out, I think I need to go look at my notes because I had some thing here. Where's my docs? Let me go to the docs section of my code base. Hold on, just situating some things a little bit. Where are my docs? Okay, here we go. Was it Tesseract? Maybe it's just general README. No. OpenCV probably. Probably not. I think it was Tesseract actually. Here we go. Found it. So let's see here. I do have test results from last week. And I do have... So this is what Tesseract saw. That scored well. Okay, I think this will prove the point for me, actually. Yeah, it's amazing that, like, this one scores the best out of all of them. And actually down here, I think it actually has a little worse binarization. And I think we have extra little artifacts in here too. And the letters aren't smooth and like... I don't know, I do think we see more letter E's that are connected actually. Which was something I was trying to do for a while. In fact, even like when they're not connected, that's much more obviously an E instead of a C. So again, maybe that was the key when I went down that rabbit hole of trying to... what is that called? When you... like soften everything and then sharpen it again and then soften it again, do it back and forth. But then I was changing the parameter so it wouldn't do it in the vertical, in the x-axis, but only in the y, and that was supposed to preserve small details, and it kind of worked. But I guess for this image I don't need to do it because look at these letter E's. These letter E's look great, and clearly Tesseract is happy with that. So that's what I'm here to do. Let's do... Actually, you know what? Let me just open this in a notepad file. Or fine, open with code. There we go. Let's do that. And then let's grab this script. Generate a Docker file, edit, and add this right before the closing body tag. Body tag or header tag? That's not correct. So we don't have a standard HTML file here. Let's see here. Let me steal from somebody else. Inspect. What is it like? Right. HTML head body. Head body. Right. HTML head body, and then close them all up. body head HTML. All right, that should work. And then, oh wait, what am I doing? Close up the head up here. It is Monday, and I am not thinking straight. It's not an outward wrapper. Okay, but the whole thing is HTML. Correct. Right. Okay, so I think I mistyped, and I think I need to put the script there. So if I do that, and then I go back to the folder, and I open this in, does not appear to have any style information associated with it. Shoot. Okay, what if I move that then? Maybe I didn't put it wrong. Save that, and nope. No, I think I originally said in my notes, add this right before the closing body tag, which seems a little odd. Normally you would put script tags in the header, but let me see here. I think when I write these Hocker files out, I'm not doing them correctly. Shoot. Okay, well, let's do this. Command prompt, Tesseract -- help. Cool. Tesseract's available. cd dev reading room. cd testing. All right, let's do. Go back to my notes again. If I want to print that file, here we go. So yeah, that file is available, and then we're going to output a Hocker result. Right, so it needs an XML document. Let's redirect that to Hocker.example. All right, so that's going to run for a half second, and then if I come back over here, it was testing, right? Oh, there we go. Hocker.example. Open with VS Code. Okay, so now we have all this. All right, let me grab the top here. So it is HTML, but then we have like an XML tag at the top. Okay. I guess when I save this file off, I don't include any of the header info. So now we have all that. We have the body. Close that, right? And then we close the body and we close the HTML. Close the body, close the HTML. Let me save that, and then if we go back to here, and now if we open this, we get nothing. But I think that's because, don't I tell it which file to go off of? Perhaps. So what's our header info here? OCR capabilities, OCR system, Tesseract 5.5. how does it know what image to use? Because there's no image data here. Image. Div class. So this is where we tell it the image. So what does this have at the top? Image unknown. Okay. So that's simple. I would say that we are... Yeah. Should be that, right? Does that work? So 10 Tesseract binarized.png, because this is what it's running off of. So it probably makes sense. I mean, I could do that or final crop, but probably binarize is better because that's actually what Tesseract ran it off of. Hello? Image is... Okay, so maybe this is in the wrong spot then. Again, I'm pretty sure this should go in the header and not the bottom of the body, which is my typo. Well, so now we get the text. Where's the console? Can't access property inner HTML. Document.body is null. Okay, so we are running... Okay, so maybe then it does have to be at the bottom of it, because it's saying can't access property inner HTML. All right. Let's go back to putting it where I put it. Let's assume my original notes were correct. New error. Right-hand side of in should be an object got undefined. Okay, but my notes said to put it before the closing body tag. This isn't going to be some weird thing where I put it there, right? How did I do this before? This was so easy the first time I had it working. Uncaught typed error. Right-hand side of in should be an object got undefined. In. Where's in? All right. Well, the other thing I could do is test it here, right? Oh, rename it to .html. Ugh. All right, well, that might help. Rename. Are you sure? I'm darn sure. There we go. Okay, so... Let me update my notes here. So file starts with let's do okay. Then we do add this, make sure, well, so make sure first div declares the name of the image file to use, well, to overlay. And we will do, this file doesn't exist anymore, so we'll close that. We'll do like, sure, let's just take the whole thing. And then add this and then rename file to .html. All right. So how does this look if I drag this out? This is annoying. How do I close this? Fine, well, I'll just go, I'll zoom in a lot. So what's our problem? If I go off of line info, oh, I don't have the background. The background image is not showing up. Okay. Again, let's go with, I mean, that's probably fine. Again, let's put it in the head and refresh. Okay, that breaks it. So that is weird that you got to put it there. What if we change the file? So if we go with 9 final crop.png. 9 final crop. Weird. So the binarized version it didn't like. All right, well, that's fine. Let's zoom in. Well, fit width. Let's do that. Okay. Okay, I can toggle the background image and weird. Font scale. Okay, I want highlighting. Okay. Highlight inline, not blank. Yeah, I want to see those words. This is highlighting the words. We want the lines. Paragraphs are fine. How do I turn off the font? sip of water. Or a sip of coffee, rather. Because it's annoying to see it this way. Well, I'll turn off the background images for the moment. Oh, I think it's one of those... There we go. Transparent text has to be enabled. Okay. And then if we... All right, let's turn off the green and let's turn off paragraphs. So I think this illustrates the one problem. Like if I wanted to use yellow, the yellow is the lines. And if I wanted to use them to figure out line height, we immediately have problems because of page warping. And I don't want to turn page warping back on because it's super slow. I do keep waffling on that. On the one hand, I do want to have page warp to like de-warp pages, but it is so slow. And yeah, in situations like this, it causes a problem because like this block, this line is going to be so much bigger than this line and like lines beneath it. And then, this is so annoying that this bar here is on the left. Can I center it? Oh, wait. Is that a... That is a thing. Okay, good. There we go. If I click that again... Alright. Let's fit with, and then let's hide that. Yay. Okay, I knew there would be a thing. Alright. Yeah, and then this is going to throw off like the width of the line. So it's this top one showing like this really wide width, but as we go further down, the lines get skinnier. So now down here, it's saying the line width is super skinny, which doesn't really make sense. I mean, even ignoring the thumb, like this line is incredibly skinnier than this line. Heights are going to be thrown off. And then if we look at the words, if we look at words instead of lines. So going line based, I don't think really makes sense. Let's go look at the words. And then paragraphs are... Like, paragraphs are just silly. A lot of it. I mean, sometimes paragraphs are great, but only if the book is perfect. Alright, so this is word highlighting. Interesting that I found a word up there. Which is probably... Ooh, that's interesting. So it's counting that as being part of the line. What is that anyway? A semicolon. Gross. So what did I have in my notes? Because I had notes on how to attack this problem. My observations. Yeah, so bounding box height and width are heavily impacted by how far away the text is from the camera. Because of warping, line heights might vary greatly. Yep. Don't try to be precise, just determine certain truths about each line. So if we average our word or line height. So I think that's interesting. If I just average the word height. The problem, maybe do we have a problem there too though? Because I think down here, like this word height. Oh, if I mouse over that, it tells me, right? That's interesting. Okay. Oh, and it tells me the confidence too. This is pretty cool. Okay, that doesn't really tell me the height. What is it? X. So 207 to 270. So it's about 63 pixels by 20 pixels. Okay, so it's 60 pixels long by about 20 pixels high. And then if I come up here, and is that like a bigger word? I mean, that is a bigger box than the ones around it. So again, we're talking 20 pixels high. And this one is it's still about 20 pixels. That's like 22. This one is 23. Okay, so I probably could just do the average height and use that to, and as long as it's within plus or minus 10% or whatever it's going to be. Well, I guess if we did 20, if it deduces that, if the math tells us it's like around 20, then 10% of that's like 2. Okay, so we might have to do like 20%. Something like that. So we could compute the average plus or minus 10 or 20%. Then we know, okay, that's paragraph text. Give it the paragraph treatment. Do we do that per line? Or I mean, I guess we... I don't know if we should ignore... Well, okay. Yeah, we do ignore the bottom and top 10%. That way we get rid of page titles and things like that. So we just take most words that we find. That also gets rid of some noise where, yeah, there might be a word slightly bigger for random reasons, or like some tiny little one-off semicolon. Like this one, actually. This one's going to be an outlier. It's saying that's a semicolon, and that also has a height of 43. So it's twice as tall as anything else, which doesn't really make sense. Okay, so we can do that, figure out the average word height, and say that that's paragraph height. Anything substantially bigger than that gets title treatment, or gets it's like itself scaled up proportionally. Of course, what that means is in this scenario, this gets treated like a paragraph, and then this would end up actually getting treated like a title. So the title of that page is going to end up being a semicolon, which is funny. It does have low confidence. That's interesting. This has low confidence of 0, but that's correct, to put it simply. Sales driven, 0 confidence, but that is correct. Might be hard to use the confidences then. %, confident. That's 0%? Okay, so I can't just straight up ignore things with confidence. That's disappointing. Alright, so that should work. Word height for that. Mean line length. Used to detect indented lines and make sure that that text fits rendering. Might not need this at first. This is a problem because if we, like this line length, if we count all the words in this line, then this line's really long. This line's going to be really short. And the mean is going to be like somewhere around here. I mean, I could use that to normalize the lines, but it doesn't really tell me. Because like this would maybe determine that it's indented. But then what if you have a short one like this? This is not indented, it's just short. Let me think. indented lines. No. Because even like if nothing else, warp causes issues here. Also, last lines in a paragraph will be shorter. So what can we do? I mean, I think we did. So I think we said like, okay, maybe like this might not be needed at first. So I think this is a bad idea. I can ignore it. This, and now this will mathematically work, I think. Is indented if start word of line is more to the right than neighbors. So that's interesting. So that solves this kind of fact that the book is like tilted away slightly, I think. So if we just compare it to its neighbors, but this one kills me, right? Because, we have this semicolon here. So this is going to come back as not being more indented than its neighbors, even though it is indented. That's funny. Wonder why that is. Did I not... So for whatever reason, whenever we cropped and rotated, we end up with this. Why is that black there? And then that carries through all the way to where we finally try to OCR it. So funny. All right, well, in theory that would work, right? So if we look at this one, it's start X. If we just look at its neighbors around it. And in fact, we could look at the two before and the two after. That way, if like we're looking at something at the start of a page, fine, let's just look at the two after. And we would see that this one's further in, so therefore... Or, you know, keep it simple and just look at before and after. And if it doesn't have a before, then ignore it. Like, just use the one after it. And if it is... Or I guess grab the first three lines we can get, starting with the line before it. So this one wouldn't have a line before it, so we would get 1, 2, 3. This one would be 1, 2, 3. And so based on that, this one's further to the right, therefore it's indented. Give it the indented treatment. Okay, that works. New paragraph. If gap with previous line is bigger than mean of all lines. Well, this image doesn't really help us with that. What about this Harry Potter one? Docker.html. Yeah, might become unusable. Okay, and then let's open that in VS Code. There we go. Okay, let's go with that. All right, we don't need to close the controls. Let's hide paragraphs. Yeah, and then transparent text. And then what is this blue? Oh yeah, okay. So lines is interesting because yeah, so if we did this right in here, this one would be more indented. Of course, it's saying all of that is one big line, but that's because we don't have a flat page. I am still thinking at some point I'm going to have to do dewarping again, and I may have to pull up my sleeves and see if I can just make that code a lot faster. But when we get down here, yeah, that's indented when compared to its neighbors. Indented. But what about like a paragraph break? Do we have that at all? No, none of these have a paragraph break. Darn. And I guess like the Hawker structure itself is trying to help me because it's giving me this line info. So like for a given line, it is like the min max values for all the words containing it. So I bring this in, like the reason why this line is so low, like why it's so tall, is because the word Ron over here is pushing it to the lower corner. If that word wasn't there, it would be skinnier. And then the top of it is set by the word of, which is pushing it up. And that, again, that's because of warp, because of the warping. And that's why these lines are overlapping. And why it's really ugly to read it, to like look at this, because each line is running into the one next to it. But I think you could do this by looking at the first word in each line. I think if we did that, that'd be okay. Because then oh, do the settings carry over? No. Guess I just was looking at it. Yeah, because if we look at this then, we would say, okay, not a huge gap, not a huge gap. Again, we could measure the average gap. Maybe measure average gap between lines / first word. If we did that, we would see these regular gaps, plus or minus. And in this case, we wouldn't detect anything. But if there was a gap, we would notice it. Okay. Is title if all words outside of mean word height? Yeah, scale it. Lines should keep track of... You know, this I could also do by just looking at neighbors. Maybe just look at neighbors for this one as well. Yeah, okay, so then while we're looking at neighbors, since we're already going to say, hey, let's look at the neighbors to determine indent, in addition to detecting that, we could also, at the same moment, figure out a new paragraph. Lines should keep track of word count and word height sum. Mean word height is computed. Maybe get for free from Hawker, but beware of warp skew. Line should have a function that returns length from start word to end of end word. Again, Hawker gives us that. And I don't like it. I think we ignore that. Again, I think we just look at the neighbors around it to determine. Yeah, I don't think we care about this. Line should have a function that returns the length. No, you know, the Hawker doesn't give this to us. Well, it kind of does. So if I look at this, again, this is going to have a long length. And then down here, the length gets a lot shorter because these words are further away. So that skews the results. So maybe we don't do that. If chunking OCR with crops, keep track of pixel we cropped on. So it can be used to offset. Yeah, sure. All right, I think I have what I need to build. So all right, let's start writing some pseudocode. And I'm working from a blank slate, right? Right. Although I previously had done a little bit of work on this. So what am I doing? So this is the HUD. This is not the debug HUD. Debug HUD. Maybe I detach this. Right, and this is where I add a new script. And I call it page text. Let's do that. So this is for me to experiment with a new way of rendering this. Shoot. Sorry, no, this is the wrong thing. Delete that. And that's going to be a mesh instance 3D. Okay. Let me think. Where do I want to do this? So OCR Manager finishes doing its thing. It parses the Hawker results. Yeah, it's interesting. It writes it like that. So I guess when we get it from here, it doesn't have the header or anything. It's just pure divs. And then we call game state add page. We add the new page, which this just keeps track of the page, right? Yeah, it's an OCR page. Where am I? I got lost. And then we emit the fact that we have a new page. And then book text just jams it there. So I think what I'm probably doing then now is that's why this script needs to be on this mesh instance, because instead of having a single label that's just going to have a paragraph of text, I mean, maybe it can. What am I allowed to do with this? Label 3D. Godot label 3D indent. Indent. Why is this tray here not moving? Let's do that. What? Am I in the wrong? Oh, I had this over here for some reason. Fine. I'll leave it here. Rows sum. Wait, what was this? Oh, yeah, this isn't gonna work. I think I tried this. But fine. Let me. Fine. Let's start a new chat. Godot 4.5 label 3D. Is there a way to add formatting to the input text for this element? Text formatting are limited compared to rich text label. Right. Simple 3D text. Right. Font selection. Yeah. Right. So I can't do BB. Right. That's what I was looking for. BB code. So I can't do indentation or anything like that. Multiple label 3. That's what I was thinking about, like dynamically adding them. But this feels hacky. Create a sub viewport with a rich text label. Apply the viewport's texture to a quad. I think this is what they want you doing, Godot. So if we go look at the docs, composition layer. I didn't want to have to go implement this, but I think maybe I should. In XR games, you generally want to create user interactions that happen in 3D space, but sometimes you just want to add a 2D component to your scene. Godot needs depth information. The solution is to render the UI in a sub-viewport and display the result. I'm using OpenXR and looking at their docs. It sounds like I should maybe explore a composition layer for this approach. Would that allow me to use BB code? Is it BB code? BB code. Markup. Searching the web. Composition layers would be a good approach. You can absolutely use BB code markup with this method. Render UI to a sub-viewport and display the result using the viewport texture. Solving the quality loss problem that occurs. Yeah. And the quality loss problem is big. I do care about this since it's reading text in VR. So I was thinking I needed a composition layer anyway. So create a sub-viewport. Add a rich text. Okay, fine. Let's leave this script here for now. So on the debug HUD, let's add a sub-viewport. And I'll call it text container for the heck of it. And then let's add a rich text label. Call it page. So we add a rich text label as a child, which I think is also what they say here, right? So add a sub-viewport. The quad mesh is a suitable option for this. Offers a solution to this problem through composition layers. Currently 3 nodes that expose this functionality. I think I want the quad layer. Quad size. Okay. Stepped as sub-viewport for a 2D UI. This doesn't require any specific steps. You can now create by adding child nodes to the sub-viewport as you normally would. To save this 2D UI as a sub-scene to do layout. I mean, I already am. Update mode when visible will not work as Godot can't determine whether this viewport is visible to the user. Okay. The second step is adding our composition layer. We can add the correct composition layer node as a child node. Okay, this is where I got confused. So it's like and this is one of those things that I never fully understand. Hey, what's up, Scroll? How you doing? So this is something I never really fully understand. So it seems like you add the composition layer to the XR origin, but then somehow tell it the viewport to use, which could be from a whole separate scene. I've seen this before, and it always throws me off a little bit. Okay, assign the sub-viewport to the composition layer. Okay, so this is what it's saying as well. Again, this is just reading the docs, so it's just summarizing what I'm already reading on my own. So if I go with this, do hello world. And then under main XR origin, we are going to add composition layer. Fine. Composition layer quad. See, it's in its own scene, so I can't do that. I mean, I guess I can. I just don't do it here. Fine. Was it sub viewport? And then rich text layer. Rich text label. Call that page. Hello world. And then for this, I'll assign its viewport to be that. What happens if I just run this now? I mean, I'm not surprised the answer is nothing. Assign the sub viewport to the composition layer's layer viewport property. Yep, I can do BB code. Much higher quality text rendering, fine. I may have to test this with the headset. But this just threw it at the origin, right? All right, let me plug in the headset and visually see this so I can debug it better. And while I do that, let's cast. So I probably could just move this to the book anchor underneath the book. That's probably where I want it anyway. All right, this first build's going to take a little bit of time. Okay, so then what I would be doing is it would be a single label with a single block of text, and then what I would do is I would go line by line, and as I determine whether or not that line's indented or not, I would just use BB codes to add extra styling. And then it'll be a single node, which will be very clean. And then hopefully the text starts displaying really nicely. Quite pretty. Why is this taking so long? I guess it is always the first one of the day that takes forever. As, I don't know, Android Studio updates something. Let's change our lighting while we're at it. I'm feeling blue right now. Let's do that. And because I'm casting, the permissions won't go through quick enough. That's fine. Let's... but we're going to lose our debugging. That's really annoying. Can't I... How do you... You should be able to start up debugging again. See, I should be able to, like, debug run without doing remote deploy, which is going to deploy a whole new instance. Why can't I just connect to the headset? All right, let me just stop casting for the moment. At least until I get a proper connection to the headset. I mean, I guess technically it shouldn't matter because I'm not trying to do to OCR text right now, so the permissions don't really matter to me. I just care more about, like, does this element display correctly in the world? All right. Failed to end frame. Well, the VR headset's just behaving weird right now. Hold on. Oh, I guess I am restarting the headset then. Okay. Just give this a moment, and I will cast. I just need to get something running on the headset. I don't care about all these menus. Meta, leave me alone. Stop being annoying. All right. Right, so now we're all connected. I can put that down. I can run this again. Let me think here. Okay, yeah, so that prototype code I did last week might not be relevant at all then, because if I'm just dealing with a single element, I don't need to do any complicated dynamic adding of labels to the scene. Okay, let's see here. Starting up now, maybe properly. What is going on? Failed to end frame. Why is it pose invalid? None of this was happening last week. All right, let's go back to basics. Let's clear that. Oh, right, I forgot I can, like, control the camera here. Right. This... Where is it? Come on. Stop. Okay, Godot, I might have to restart you. Oh, hi, Minecraft man. I mean, there's a slight chance it's related to the new things I just added. Fine, let me kill this and start over. Let's do a git status -s, and I'll do a git checkout debug HUD dot tscn git checkout main dot And what do we have? We got our page text.gd. You know what? Remove page text star. Okay, now we're back to like just some doc changes and nothing that mattered. Let's launch Godot again and see if I can get it running on the headset. I don't know why this was working last week, but now not working. So let's just get it working again and then start making changes and see if it breaks again. How is your day going? A little slow. But I think I figured out like what I was doing last week isn't a wise approach, because it's not gonna, the text is not gonna align properly. Like I can't just go off of the line info coming out of the Hocker results. So I think I need to do something slightly simpler and smarter to display the text properly, so we get indentations and things like that showing up properly. So that's what I'm doing now. Okay, let's run this on the headset again. This should be vanilla with what's on the main branch. And once that's working, then I can start adding things in. Ah, it's going to do this whole slow build again. Paying for Linktree? No, free. Although I'm thinking about getting rid of Linktree. It's too annoying with the way they set things up. And I have a website that's mobile friendly, so I may just add a custom Linktree of my own and just have like a landing page that's mobile friendly that just only has links off to other things. But the way I'm using Linktree, it's free, but they have tried to monetize the platform, so they make it more annoying now to do things that look good. Okay, now is this going to work like normal? I think it is. So now if I cast... Okay. And I think everything's going to work too, right? Oh, where's the HUD? Well, this happens a lot too. I don't know why this happens. Now if I hit, okay, book too far away. There we go. So now it... What the heck? That now it's never done that before. Did it crash the app? What? That's fun. And debugging ended. Huh. So, well, and we never even found a book. It just crashed. Weird. Okay. Let me force uninstall it. Where do I have that? There we go. Let me force uninstall from the headset. Let's run it again. It's making you pay. Huh. Yeah, I don't know why. Like, again, if you've ever heard of the term enshittification, it's not always true of every product, but it is somewhat the path that most products take, where at first it's free and they give everything away for free, but then at some point they've got to monetize, and the only way they can monetize is to take things away from you and make the free experience uncomfortable or do ads or something like that. So last I checked, Linktree was still free, but if they were trying to nudge you towards paying. But maybe they changed that. I haven't looked in a while. Okay. Permissions and... Oh, well. It should have already deployed. Okay. Let's see if it crashes this time. Hopefully it just doesn't crash. Okay, book too far away, and... Come on. Huh. It's now crashing. Why is that? It wasn't crashing before, but now it's crashing. Okay, well, I'm going to pretend that that's not happening for the moment, and hopefully it doesn't keep happening. But that's not the problem I need to worry about right now, because... Huh. That's funny. Everything was definitely working. I wonder. I mean, I could always go pull the logs off the headset. And I'm sure, you know what, actually, the way I've seen things happen before, I'm sure there's a single line of code change that I made somewhere that maybe is triggering the crash. But what I want to see for the moment is... Okay, well, at least it works for the moment. It is free, you were in the wrong spot. Yeah, that can happen. Okay, well, fine. Do this. Allow. Fine, there we go. Doesn't have cameras, but I don't... Crashed again. Alright, you know what? What's going on? Where's my Android notes? Let's do that. Pit out of range. Okay. Let's do this again then. Right, so there's no process because it's not running, so I can't see the process logs. Let me just trigger a quick crash and see what I can see. Hopefully it's just something obvious, like a single line of code somewhere. It'd be very frustrating if like Godot updated the Android templates or something like that. Okay, and allow. I think it crashes now, right? Okay, there we go. Now it finally crashed. And then let's go look at this quest.log. And again, my bottom nav bar, for whatever reason, is not closing when it should. All right, searching for quality book, and then fatal signal 11, fault address, VK thread. The hell? Well, that's not helpful. Permission granted. Not enough cameras, fine, yeah, that always happens. Client has gained focus. Well, you know, I thought I was going to be working on text this morning, but it seems like no, I might be working on this. What the heck? Beginning of crash. Fatal signal 11. Okay. How I got my profile pic is kind of funny. I just looked at my MC player and took a pic. Okay. Godot 4.5 VR app running on the Quest 3. Everything was running fine the other day. Just... That's a weird J. That is a very weird looking J. Just did a fresh deploy. And now it's crashing. The only error in the logs is this, is below. Any thoughts? I mean, it's a segment fault, sig fault of the VK thread. Vulkan related crash. Vulkan driver issues. Quest 3 firmware driver updates. So the Quest 3 did update the other day. Verify your XR settings haven't been corrupted. Yeah, that's not going to be it. OpenXR and project settings. Check if Vulkan mobile renderer is still selected. All right, well, a couple things I can do. I can do / build all. Let me rebuild all of my C++ stuff. Okay, nothing's changed on that front. I mean, I was previously on a branch. It's possible my C++ rebuild here might fix something. No worries, Minecraft. Yeah, so, okay, that's possible that'll fix it. What else are we saying? Vulkan mobile renderer is still selected. Check if Quest 3 updated recently. Settings system software update. Temporarily switch to a different renderer. Project settings rendering. All right, well, let's close this. Driver is Vulkan. I'm using the mobile renderer, and it's saying temporarily switch to GLES3 renderer. Rendering, renderer, rendering method. What's the default of that? Forward plus. Maybe I'll switch to forward plus, maybe. I think I need to be on mobile. I think forward plus is considered better, but not quite ready yet. I can never keep track of what renderer you're supposed to use when. All right, so it's crashing, but it seems like it has nothing to do with my recent code changes. All right, so I need to get this back to like working, because I don't think I can see anything in the local editor. Ideally, I would work from there. Let's clear that, and then... Well, it doesn't matter about permissions because the permissions won't take anyway. So I might as well just wait for that. How did I get verified for channel points? Randomly, recently, Twitch told me I was eligible for monetization or something or other. I don't know. I haven't really looked into what that means, what I should be doing, how much I should care about it. Like, I know of a lot of the features that Twitch has for bigger streamers, but I don't know how much of any of that stuff I really care about. I think I crossed some sort of magical threshold. It's actually possibly thanks to some of you guys. I think last Wednesday, having a couple of people hanging out and chatting for a while somehow triggered Twitch to say that I'm now, like, I guess I'm a real streamer, I guess, finally. Whatever that means. So I think that's what happened. I think, yeah, last week something just changed. Okay, let's allow those permissions. Not enough cameras, sure. I mean, everything still renders, so I think I should be on the Vulkan renderer if I can be. What happens? Okay, well, if I just drag this over here, what happens if I start adding things in the world? So what is it? XR origin. I need to add a composition layer quad to the XR origin, right? Was that the thing? Yeah. Add it under XR origin 3D. Where's that camera? I can't really fully show this at the same time, but I can at least give peeks. So if I drag that there and I rotate it, it's transparent. I don't know what that means. It'll suck because you can't monetize yet. Why does that suck? Alpha blend on, I don't know what any of this does. All right, this probably means I'm gonna add that sub viewport, and then this composition layer is gonna be the sub viewport, and then the sub viewport itself. Use XR. Okay. Let's just do a mesh underneath it, and I'll do it's a quad mesh. All right, and then we'll do well, that doesn't seem to be there. I don't know how this thing's supposed to show up. What are we looking for? I am looking for a rich text label. Yeah. Rich text label. I'll do a hello world on that, and then we will do fine, maybe go, it doesn't matter. Does this have like a width to it? Okay, so in theory that is there. Layout. Okay. So you just can't do monetization. I mean, honestly, I also wouldn't worry about it until you. I mean, it's like one of those things like, you know, like YouTube monetization. Okay, like you can monetize, but if you monetize the second they allow you to, it's not really any money anyway. It's not really worth worrying about until you're actually big enough to actually care, in my mind. Does this not? Okay, so I would think that the sub viewport itself would have a size to it, but now... But see, this is even showing here, this text, this is how it shows up in the sub viewport. So why is it not filling to it? Fit content, sure, let's do that. Well, that's better. If I go to 3D, okay, well now we're a bit better. Auto rep, word smart. Let's do off. And if I go to the sub viewport, okay, now here we go. Cool. And then can I just jump up the font size maybe? I mean, it is big enough, so I don't know if I really care. I mean, it's big enough to be visible. So what's interesting is the... I don't know what that... So it's just a thing like that. Okay, so it says the camera starts over there. Okay. So then let me just do... I can't move the viewport like that. Okay. What if I do that? And I go this way. And I go up. Does it show up now? And what about the rich text label? In 3D. Well, that's funny. Oh, okay. There we go. I'm gonna go up a little bit. Let's go closer to the camera. So it should be there. And it should be big and bold and obvious. I don't see that there at all. Okay, maybe if I do a redeploy, maybe that'll show up. Because it's possible, I think when you move elements around in the editor, that'll update through debug mode on the headset. But if you add them, I don't know if I've seen that work yet. I haven't had enough experience doing that. Now, the other thing about this is this viewport. I feel like it might be anchored to the scene. Okay, there we go. Now it kind of shows up. All right, so it is there. But again, it is fixed to the scene. Okay, so that's fine. Let me do the permissions just to get those out of the way. And okay. Oh, but it crashes. Great. Because the app crashes again. Fine. What about running it like this? Okay, so that shows up. But the rich text labels, well, the mesh instance shows up. But not the rich text label. Why would that be? Composition layers. Talk to me about composition layers. So, can a composition layer like this be anchored to a 3D object in the scene? How do I do that? Is it just that making it a child under XR origin 3D is just an example, and I can move it elsewhere? Composition layer is more nuanced than regular 3D objects. The XR origin 3D requirement is not just an example, it's an actual technical requirement. Must be children of the origin because the XR runtime positions everything in relation to the origin. Okay, but that said, I already have my book, which is a child underneath the hand, which is a child under the origin. Actually a technical requirement. However, you can absolutely anchor. Here's your approach. Dynamic. Keep the composition layer under, but use code to continuously update its transform to follow your 3D object. Gross. Remote transform 3D. Use a remote transform 3D node to automatically sync transforms. Set its remote path to point to your composition layer. Composition layer will automatically follow the 3D object's transform. Method 3. Marker-based anchoring. Create an invisible marker object and track your 3D object. Moving the composition layer too frequently might impact performance. I have a 3D object that is under XR origin 3D, but a couple of layers deep. I can't just attach the composition layer to that. Its direct parent has to be XR origin 3D. Shows, this appears to be more about a best practice. Okay, see, you don't know. How about you just say, I don't know? You don't know is an acceptable answer. Fine, let's go book anchor. Let's put it there. Hey, like, now it's going to warn. Must have an origin. Okay, so that is the case. It should be there. That's, I don't know, that feels gross to me. Okay, fine. So remote transform 3D as a child of your 3D object. So let's try that. Remote transform 3D. Remote path to point to your composition layer. Remote path is the I mean, if that's all that's needed, I could just do some clever naming to make it clear that this links to that, and that should suffice for me. All right. What happens if I just play this? It's still not going to work, right? Because yeah, it doesn't. This is an XR thing, so it'll never show up outside of XR, which is really annoying. Yeah, why did the thing crash again? Fine, let me. In theory now, this composition layer has its sub-viewport. Let me hide the mesh instance. That's just useful for debugging. Let me send this out to the VR headset again. This time I'll actually do permissions before doing casting so that permissions actually take. And because I changed my render type, maybe it won't crash. But just to be safe, I'll probably set up logging anyway. So that way I can go triage the log. Although it seems like it just crashes and then doesn't tell me why. Let's give it a shot though. Oh, permissions and then logging. What? Oh, can't log yet because the headset's not up. All right, now I can do logging. Cool. And then I might as well do casting so you all can see what I see. And then this is of course being weird. Okay, if I... Okay, so that does work. And it crashed. What's the quest log say? Beginning of crash. SIG 11 Right, so it's still project settings. Let's go to rendering. No, see, on mobile, it's still mobile. So it says 4+ up here. All right, I wonder, this might not actually work. Curious what'll happen if I use the 4+ renderer. All right, let's send it to the headset again. All right, so the error logs aren't really helping us. It's just telling us that it crashed again. But in theory, we didn't actually change the renderer. So I wonder what'll happen this time. And I may have to check the Discord for Godot to find out if maybe there's a known issue with the latest update from Meta, which I think is a thing that can happen. Installing on the device. There's our permissions. Might as well cast. It's thinking. It wants to run. Debug stopped. Ugh, so annoying. Is it going to run at all? No, it's gone. Let's try that again. Yeah, I think it just won't run under that engine. Yeah. If I had to guess, that's probably it. Okay, so project settings. Let's do GL compatibility. I don't know why I have to type it. I guess I could just change it from up here, but let's see. Why is the headset still on, by the way? All right, let's try deploying that. Switch to the compatibility renderer and we'll see what it does. But that is kind of annoying that I can't really test it. And the rich text label takes up the entire... How do I style that viewport? I can figure all that out. Okay, did it not run? Like, what's the deal? I mean, it says it's running. Okay, so it is doing its thing. And if I do that, the text is gone. Why is the text gone? And the app crashes. Let me try grabbing the logs again. One thing I can do is bring that up and bring this over. Let's launch from there. Give it a couple seconds, and there we go. Now we're capturing logs. Everything seems like it's working fine. It will crash in a moment, though. Hasn't crashed yet. There we go. And I assume it's the exact same error that we got before. Beginning of crash. Okay. Switched to the compatibility renderer and got a similar error. The fact that you're getting the same seg fault with both Vulkan and OpenGL. Okay, so when people talk about the OpenGL renderer in Godot, they are talking about the compatibility renderer. Suggests that it isn't a renderer specific issue. The null pointer is happening in the graphics thread regardless of the backend. Most likely causes native plugin GD extension. If you're using any native plugins, they might have corrupted memory. Could be a bug in Godot 4.5. Disable XR in the project settings. Then it's VR specific. Huh. Interesting. So let me see here. Project settings. If I go to renderer again. Okay, so that's all GL compatibility. If I change this to mobile, what is that? I think that automatically updates those other settings. Right. So that's where the mobile is mobile, web is GL compatible. Gotcha. OpenGL is compatibility. Okay, and then forward plus, I can't remember what that is. For starters, okay, this mesh instance, I can delete. Okay, this sub viewport should have a size of like 100. Well, that's width, right? Let's go 200 by 100. And then I can anchor it to the spot. Maybe I can put this sub viewport somewhere else. So it doesn't say. Shouldn't I be able to work with that text here? Okay. I was hoping to work with this without needing to debug. Okay, pick priorities, Ed. Figure this out. I think I need to fix the VR. So I think I just need to go that route. So what is it saying? Disable XR and run it again. So project settings. Let's turn off OpenXR. And then run that on the headset. And I'll probably do the permissions anyway, but I don't think it matters. Because if it's going to crash, it'll crash. Still installing. All right, I'm done with coffee. Let's drink some water. Quit that, and then let's do that, and then we'll go. Is it not running it as a process? I would think it would at least start. Well, that didn't work. Let's see. When I ran it, okay, because we're probably crashing before we can even. Fine. Project settings. Let's turn on OpenXR, and then in main we just won't try to enable it. Where's main? Here we go. XR interface is, well, fine. If false. And all right, let's run that. So then we won't initialize it. And that should test that scenario. All right, well, Not a fun morning. But this will at least narrow it down, because this will tell me if it's XR related. And let's just do regular quest logging. Oh yeah, why was I spamming this command earlier? I was trying to get the logs going. That's dumb. Oh, here we go. There's no rendered output. I don't think it crashed though. Let's clear and then yeah, I think it's just running now. Okay. And then history, commands. Fine, let's just do force stop. Okay. I didn't disable in settings, but I did skip XR initialization in my main.gd. Black screen with lots of errors in the logs, comma, but it never crashed. Okay, so in theory, this is a XR/VR initialization rendering pipeline. Create a completely new scene with just an XR origin and a camera. And just initialize XR. Since both renderers crash, this could be Quest 3's OpenXR runtime corruption, Godot 4.5 OpenXR integration bug, my setup of OpenXR. One other thing I can try. Let me kill this. Let's back up our code, and I could go back an extra commit and test code changes from like a week ago and see how they run, and that'll tell me if it's somehow, maybe, just maybe, something related to my code. So let's do we'll call it pretty book text. And what do we have? Git add star.tscn, git add docs. Fine. Git add bin. Well, Let's not add bin. So all we did was add a couple of things to the main scene. All right. So we are trying to do a composition layer to display BB code text. Let's do that, pretty text, refresh this, open that as a pull request, code's backed up, and then let's go to a commit from like a week ago. I mean, it's possible, so it's possible there's a failure here. Might as well go to this. Let's grab that commit hash, and then let's kill VS Code on the off chance that VS Code gets unhappy with me doing this. Let's go back to main, not that I need to. Git checkout bin. And then let's check out that hash. And then while we're on that hash, let's build all, launch Godot, and see if we get something that doesn't crash. And this might be the last thing I do this morning, unfortunately, before stepping away for the afternoon to do other things. All right, permissions queued up, and then, right, we have the hash, so we know that this is the code that we're running. E9E. E9E is what we're running. So if this works just fine, then that means there's an issue in one of these two, which means then I would just run this one and confirm that it probably was the notification HUD. But if it doesn't, if it crashes, then that tells me that it's something fundamental to Godot, which might be solvable by me just version bumping Godot again. But again, last time I did that, it broke some things. With my build templates. So, but this might be an inevitability. I might be stuck having to figure this out. Okay. Cast, why not? Let's see. By the way, oops, that was dumb. Not what I wanted to do. All right, run that again. We'll do permissions, and then we will do log cap. Why is it doing... Wait. I just force stopped it again. That's hilariously stupid again. Okay. I'm trying to like start the logs quickly just in case like it crashes, but then I'm running the wrong command. All right, let me try this again. I mean, I guess I'm force stopping. I don't need to do a redeploy. I could just go into the headset and launch the app again, but I want to do this from here and maybe get decent logs. Like have a decent setup for seeing this. Okay, permissions, and then that's the force stop. There we go. Here's our log cap. All right, so there's no process available. There we go. So this is an older version of things. Hey, okay. So so it OCR'd. Okay, this might actually be my code, which I'm kind of happy about. I don't really want to be hunting down Godot engine incompatibilities with the latest meta release where maybe things will fix themselves. I don't really want to be doing that. So it hasn't crashed yet, and we actually did an OCR event. So we OCR'd something, even though it's horrendous. Yeah, so if I look at this then, yeah, here's more. Again, this is when the code was still just, it would OCR any random frame it could get. It wasn't being smart. So this is just OCRing gibberish, which is kind of expected. All right, so that means it's my code, despite what Claude AI says. So that means, let's verify it is, which commit it is. It would almost certainly be the last commit. Let's get rid of bin, and then let's check out, let's check out 517. Okay, now we're on 517. Let's rebuild our backend, launch Godot, put it on the headset, and verify that this works. Which means it must be something from my last code change. Which doesn't really make sense. But hey, you know, baby steps. You know, it's possible I added a small like C++ error in the back end somewhere, and I'm just not seeing it in my logs. All right, this is still building. Done. Okay. Let's run this on the headset. And I'm not even going to bother doing the logs at first. Let's just do the permissions and see it work. And then if this works, again, then I'll go to the latest commit, which will be main, rerun everything again, confirm I'm getting the error to there. And then, again, this is why it's always good to do small PRs merged often, small code changes, because then it makes it much easier to go find that needle in the haystack of like what line of code did I make that it's unhappy with. All right, there's the permissions. Let's cast. Let's resume, because it... Oh, this will be interesting. Oh, no, here we go. So it is the... Well, we lost our debugging. But I should still be able to do log cap. Fine, let's just do the logs that way. this commit, I think it was waiting until I had an available book. And then it would just scan immediately, which also still produced bad results, but it was at least a little bit smarter. No, see, it says it's searching, so it's not doing the... No, it still says it's searching. Well, either way, it's not crashing. Come on, get me some OCR, please. Being buggy, but it should work. I mean, I want to see it get OCRs, and then I know that it's not anything in that section of code. Because in theory, it could be, if I don't trigger it. Hold on. If I get better lighting in the room, maybe it's rejecting it because of bad lighting. No, not using Easy OCR. I'm using Tesseract. Okay, let's see here. Come on, it's gonna work. I don't think it is. I think it's still... No, actually, there we go. To put it simply, the consequences, yeah, okay, fine. So, this commit worked, which means now we know that the error, whatever the error is, if it does exist, it's in this code change. So, and this is main. So let me go through the slow, tedious process again. Well, I'm Sherlock Holmesing this. So we eliminate the impossible, and whatever remains, however improbable, must be true. I'm pretty sure I tested all this. Git checkout source. Why does that have a... Oh, I think maybe I forgot to commit that file and I went to the last commit. Git checkout main. So let's... Hopefully now this fails, maybe. I thought I tested it, but maybe like the last commit I made wasn't fully tested on the headset. It's possible. I am learning this. It does seem like sometimes I'll make changes. You test it running the test suite. Everything will work fine. But for whatever reason, like the VR headset would just behave a little bit differently. So let's try the... cancel now. Let's run Godot this time and see if this is it. Have you ever worked with Easy OCR? I've heard about it. A couple of people talk about Tesseract. Might be my next path for fixing my little script. Yeah, I mean, I did briefly look at Easy OCR. I can't remember why I decided not to use it. Yeah, I can't remember why. But yeah, I'm familiar with Easy OCR a little bit. All right, let's save the scene. We're back on main. Okay, let's take this step by step. Rebuild the GD extension that does Tesseract, that does OpenCV. Let's rebuild that for both Android and Windows. Let that run for a second. And then on the headset side, history pipe grep ADB. Let's just do that. I wish I knew the command to like make it unique, like only give me back unique results from history. Because there's an uninstall, right? Yeah. I guess I could have just searched for an uninstall. Let's uninstall it from the headset, so it's gone. The app's deleted. That's done building. Now, Godot, you can go ahead and install it. I will queue up, well, let's clear. We'll queue up permissions. Again, hopefully, if it does seem like it is my code, right? It's not. That last change did work. The headset ran. We never saw a crash. So if it is an issue with my code, hopefully it's in that last 1 or 2 commits, and it's a small, teeny tiny little thing. I never saw anything in the logs, but maybe I should take a closer look at the logs. This has been a huge distraction this morning, keeping me from actually working on things I care about. But yeah, we got logcat. Let's tell it to resume. Sometimes it just needs a moment to wake up. Cast. Okay. Now the question is, if I just stay here like this, does it crash? I don't think it does. So that means it's not like an XR thing. I don't think it would be a renderer thing. If it's gonna crash, I think it'll be when I open the book and I start scanning. Okay, book too far away. I'm taking this baby steps. If it doesn't crash here, then that means it's not like a initialization of OpenCV kind of problem, because we've already done OpenCV at this point. That says crash over there. Why did that say crash? Why is this saying crash? But the app is still running. That doesn't make any sense. Okay. Now it says processing. Okay. So now it works again. I'm confused. Yeah. So this wasn't a very good scan, but it worked, and we haven't crashed. So is it maybe something with composition layers then? Because that was the thing I was implementing, and I didn't think that this was causing a problem. Huh. Let me scroll up on this. Kind of wish I sent it to a file, because then I could have done better searchability on this stuff. Oh, and also now it's like fixed width because of the window. Whereas if I had sent it to a file, I could have parsed this better. I mean, you know, whatever. It's fine. Like, the app's running fine. We still kept getting this weird disconnect from debugging, but it's fine. Okay, so again, that means this last bit of code worked. So now I'm back to being really confused. There's a tiny chance that maybe it's this .md file. I highly doubt that. So composition layer quad. I mean, you know, what if I do that? I mean, it took 2 seconds, so let's just do it. XR origin, composition layer quad, and then for this we will add a sub viewport, and then let's add our sub viewport. OpenXR composition layers cannot use sub viewports with update when visible or update when parent visible. Switch to update always. Update mode always. Switching to update always. Okay, so they set it for me. So that wouldn't have been the issue. So what happened? You know, maybe it's just I found a bug with composition layers, or something decided it just wasn't happy and crashed for no good reason. Maybe. It's going to be really annoying if I spent this whole morning on this wild goose chase for nothing. Again, there's this weird annoyance where I have to like tell it to relaunch. Maybe this is it. So that's weird, but maybe unrelated. Let's quit, launch it again. And now, like, I know that's not my GD extension. Okay, something about the quad it doesn't like. Pose validation failure. Now if I run this again, are we back to good? So maybe it's just I can't use composition layer for the moment. Maybe that's like a 4 or 5 specific thing. And I know I'm on like a version of 4 or 5 that isn't quite ready. I'm in an experimental version. And I haven't upgraded in a bit, and I really don't want to at the moment, but that could be it. You're using easy OCR in my script, and it looks like it just keeps detecting from the same PyAuto GUI screenshot and won't clear. So I've been beating my head into a wall. I like the use of the VR glasses being used this way, by the way. Cool, thanks, man. Yeah, so I guess you're working in Python directly with easy OCR. I started prototyping in Python, but I think also the other piece is I was looking for something that I knew I could get working in C++ quite easily. Oops. Darn, this is annoying. Let me uninstall. Try again. I can't be casting when I do this, or else it causes a weird permission error, which prevents me from then debugging as easily as I'd like. Yeah, PyTorch, Python directly. Yeah, for me, I knew from the get-go that I needed everything to run in C++, so I could put everything into a GD extension to run in the background. So for me, like, I can't remember if that was the reason why I chose not to use ECOCR. Just not executing quite how my brain works it out. Yeah, the biggest thing I've learned with OCR is a lot of it just comes down to the quality of the image that you have from the beginning. You can do some things to improve quality, but if the images are bad, like that's most of the battle right there. Okay, now why did this say it was still casting? It wasn't casting. Let's cast again. All right. Let me move this out of the way. Okay, it's setting up properly. And we're probably back to it working again, right? Book too far away, at least for my current liking. Why is it saying book too far away? That feels like it should be, okay. Maybe I just needed to wait a second. Yeah, there we go. Put it simply, the consequences. Here's why. The sole goal. Yeah, here we go. This is going to be a good process. So okay, it's that composition layer. That's the issue. Which is annoying because I really wanted to use BB codes to the problem I was trying to solve. For those of you joining late. Was right now this is just a block of text, and it's not, there's no indentation for new paragraphs, there's no headers, there's no spacing for paragraphs. It's just a block of text. So it's going to start fixing that, and I didn't want to render each line by line as its own 3D label. I also heard the composition layers from the docs anyway say that the text is more readable than this approach that I'm doing right now. I mean, I think this text is pretty readable to me. I'm also using a good font for it as well. Although I guess when you get a little distance away, it's not as readable. So anyway, I was trying to get the text to display more prettily, and figured I would go down the route of composition layers so I could use BB codes, which would allow for doing things like indentation within the same text block. Maybe I can't do that. Maybe I'm not allowed to do that. All right, Godot, you tell me. So this is stable. What about 4.4? Note that hole punching isn't working in Steam VR. Okay, that's the only thing somebody else said. Okay, so in theory, I should have access to composition layers. I just don't. Maybe there's a warning in here. It is the XR runtime that presents the sub-viewport. This means that the UI is only visible in the headset. Yep, I kind of learned that the hard way a little earlier. It will not be accessible by Godot and will thus not be shown when you have spectator view on the desktop. I'm not versed in Python, so this was me. Wait, why does that keep? Oh, there we go. Dipping your toes into it. Python both powerful and annoying as hell. Well, especially getting your virtual environment set up with Python is usually the most annoying part for a lot of people. Whitespace sensitivity is new to me. You mean in terms of Python caring about whitespace and how you do indentation? When looping, it is supposed to take the screenshot, detect the text. If true, do nothing. If not, wait. then reloop and take a new screenshot. But for some reason, EasyOCR is like printing the same screenshot even when the loop has taken a new one. Does not actually tell me anything helpful. So it might be Tesseract time. I mean, I'm sure there's something, you know, like one thing that always happens is you bang your head against the wall for a while and eventually you find something that, in hindsight, it always seems easy, but, or logical, but yeah, there might just be something simple that the docs assume that you know they shouldn't be making that assumption. Yeah, installing libraries and version matching is brutal. I mean, you are using PyTorch, like you're getting into you're doing more data science-y stuff, which sometimes that can be kind of like Python on hard mode because you do end up having to need a bunch of extra stuff installed. So yeah. Tesseract is pretty easy to set up. I mean, other than the fact that you need like the language dictionaries and you need some others, you need to like have Tesseract already installed somewhere and be able to find it. And there's a little bit of annoyance in setup there, but otherwise Tesseract running in Tesseract, which is where I did a bunch of prototyping, that was pretty easy to get up and running with. So I don't know what happens with EasyOCR that way. Or what EasyOCR expects. So you're taking another screenshot. Is it expecting that you take that screenshot, write it as a file to the file system, and then when you call EasyOCR, is it picking up that file from the local file system and processing it? Is that what it's expecting? Or can you pass it like an in-memory file from that screenshot and do it that way? I don't know what that would be in that case for EasyOCR. I think all my prototyping with Tesseract, I wasn't doing camera images, so I was just working with files off the local file system and just loading them in to call Tesseract. The only fixes I can think of to restructuring this is like gonna make this like much bigger project. As much as you can, make projects simple. Cut all the features that you think you need to the bone until it's a simple project. That's generally my advice. And then you can always layer on the complexity later once you get something working. All right, I think I still want to go. I mean, I'm going to take a minute and reread these docs. But unless I see something that jumps out at me and that says, hey, you were doing this wrong, and it's my fault that things were breaking, I may just abandon composition layers for the moment and go back to effectively my older approach that I had some prototype code for. And it won't be this approach since I know this won't work. But basically go back to the path of appending 3D labels to the scene. Like, do nested for loops potentially, create a label, and then add it as a child of the scene. And I probably would just do one per line. Just add a label per line. And then if I detect that that line should be indented, do some indentation. If I detect that that line is the start of a new paragraph, then add like a gap to it. Add some padding for its location when I determine its new X, the label.position. Give it some vertical padding. I think I might just do that. But before I do that, I am going to take a hot minute and see if there's just something I'm not doing correctly in composition layers. It's doing a screen cap with PyAutoGUI. I'm not familiar with that. From a region of a window defined, then loops through to detect the text with EasyOCR like a magic phrase. Okay. So note, see GUI in 3D. Let me take a look at that real quick. A demo showing a GUI instance in a 3D scene using viewports as well as a forwarding mouse. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to read this code. The problem with displaying the viewport in this way is that the rendered result is sampled for lens distortion by the XR runtime, and the resulting quality loss can make UI text hard to read. There's a solution through composition layers. It's possible for the contents of the viewport to be projected on a surface after lens distortion. As not all XR runtimes support all composition layer types, that could be the issue. It's possible that that's just like either the headset, the Quest 3, or it's the renderer that I'm using. Godot implements a fallback solution where we render the viewport as part of the normal scene, but with the aforementioned quality limitations. Okay, so it should fall back, but I don't think it is. Retake the image every time and looping the entire thing, but it's going to be so clunky. Like, performance is something I was trying to be aware of. So what is your end goal with this project? So this is Reading Room. It's a VR app that augments the experience of reading physical books in the real world by matching the soundscape and environment to the sentiment and emotion of whatever it is you're reading. So if you're reading a scary story, then the audio and the environment around you will be try to flavor in that emotion of what's going on that page of book. And so, yeah, to kind of your point of what you were saying a second ago, I am taking an image every couple seconds. So actually what I have is basically in Godot, where do we have process function? So on every tick of the game engine, I'm calling down to my GD extension and telling it to go grab a new frame off of the camera on the VR headset. And so I'm maintaining a buffer of 5 images, I think. And then I've got some logic that's basically searching for a quality book. So it is technically, I guess this could run every like 0.2 seconds because I have an artificial pause in there to like not run this loop constantly. But basically it'll loop, it'll grab a still image from that buffer, check to see, like it'll do some OpenCV checking to like detect a book. It checks to see like how close that is, how big that is in size, meaning how close the book is to the camera. And then also does a check to see like what is its shape, how rectangular is that shape, in case like the book is slanted or angled weirdly, which is not going to OCR well. If these two checks fail, then it kicks out of the loop and goes back and waits again. It does like an artificial wait of like 0.2 seconds and then tries again. And so effectively every 2 seconds, every 1.5 to 2 seconds, it'll go through this loop. And eventually, if it does find something that passes the check, then I'm actually grabbing, since it's video feed, and video feeds have lower quality images when you grab a still frame from a video feed, I actually take 2 frames that are near each other. Because again, that buffer that's constantly filling up, where every time the engine has an engine tick, we tell it to go grab a new frame from the camera. So the frames are close enough, like, you know, if you think about like, what is it, 60 frames per second or whatever the camera's going to be, it's grabbing frames that are near each other. So I then merge those frames using OpenCV, which gets a higher quality image. I have tested merging 3 and 5 images, but I think things get slightly better with 3 images, but 90% of the quality improvement comes by just merging 2 single frames from the video feed. And then I go do a bunch of other pre-processing to prepare it for OCR, and then go do the OCRing. And the time it takes from when that begins to when we put the first text on the page, the digital page that you saw earlier, is about 8 seconds right now. I think I can get that to below 5 seconds. Makes sense why you're hung up on this OCR feed. Yeah. Yeah, oh, that's, yeah, so, yeah, that's where I have to constantly be looking for a new image, because I have to check to wait and see until somebody's actually holding a book properly. I could cheat and like give the user a button to click or something, but I'm trying to make this feel like magic in their hands. And yeah, that I don't want it to feel like magic. Right. 5 seconds is more than good enough is my hope, yeah. And then one of the things that's not quite there yet is right now, because it for whatever reason, Tesseract running on the VR headset. The VR headset's basically an Android phone, so it's pretty slow. I was able to get OpenCR to run fast on the headset, but Tesseract still, for whatever reason, it might just be, there still might be some setting tweaks that I'm just not aware of, but it takes like 30 seconds to OCR a page. And the hack solution to that is, okay, we'll chop it up, chop that frame up into like the top 10%, then the next 10%. And that's what, when I say it takes 8 seconds, that's what I'm talking about. Because then it takes like 2 seconds to OCR the top like couple lines of text from the page. And so one of the improvements I need to make is I'm currently not doing that chopping really well. So what I want it to be, after I get this working where the text displays well in the book, the next thing would be to have it, 2 or 3 lines pop in, then another 2 or 3 lines below that, and so then the text sort of slowly appears on the page. But that's a little buggy at the moment. Cheating by that's defining a small region, and the thing is, especially when you start getting into things like OpenCV and processing the image, the less image there is to process, that's also better. So if it's smaller region, smaller area of text, I'm doing a lot of things in OpenCV. Again, like this is, this checking that takes 1.5 seconds, a lot of that is like cropping down the image to just where the text is. And that does help with Tesseract's quality, but also with Tesseract's speed. So in some instances, pre-processing something in OpenCV, like that pre-processing step takes time, but then that also speeds up Tesseract. So it's like I'm taking more time on the front end, but speeding things up on the back end. And so in some cases, it actually balances out where things run a lot faster. I think there were some versions of it. If I just fed a raw image into Tesseract, on the VR headset, it would take like 2 minutes sometimes to run. And so by doing some smart pre-processing, that gets down to less than 30 seconds. I think it's like 25 seconds right now is where I had it at. Okay, so I think what I've learned is I can't use composition layers. Because that's what I did. I added it to the main scene. You can now create the 2D UI by adding child nodes. What was that child node I was adding? It was, hold on. What am I forgetting here? Sorry, rich text label. So, rich text label, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem, because that is a 2D thing. Okay, so that wouldn't have been a problem. I thought maybe for a second it could have been the rich text label. Yeah, update always. clear mode always. Okay, you can now create a 2D UI by adding child nodes. I mean, I think the test I just did was I added the sub viewport and just the composition layer, and that alone caused it to have issues. So I don't think it has anything to do with the rich text layer. Will not work. Okay. The second step is adding the composition layer, added it to the origin. We want to position the composition layer so it's at eye height and roughly 1 to 1.5 meters away from the player. I guess that's to be fixed. You will want to reposition the composition layer when the player recenters the view. Local floor will apply this logic automatically. This code also requires a mesh instance 3D node. We configure the sphere mesh. All right. I think I'm finally giving up on this. So, I am not going to do the composition layer. I think I'm just going to go back to my original implementation. But I have to go now at this point. So, it was fun hanging out with some of you. Wizardy, good luck with your open... what is it? What was it? Not OpenCV. OpenCV. Easy OCR. Right. Good luck with that, and chat later.